Have you ever noticed that one person who doesn't even reach for their phone when their car dies on the highway? They just lift the hood and stand there in the biting cold or sweltering heat, and you can see a visible shift in their eyes. It isn't panic, or even a hint of stress, but something much quieter, almost like a sense of relief. We really need to look closer at that moment, because the broken engine isn't the real story here. It never was. When you learn to master a machine as complex and brutal as an engine, it actually rewires the way you think. This isn't something you can pick up in a classroom, and you definitely won't find it in some textbook. It's a wisdom earned on a greasy driveway, fighting with a stubborn part that refuses to play along. That kind of struggle does something very specific to your psychology. It builds a raw, genuine confidence that you just can't fake or borrow from anyone else. Let's be honest. Most people spend their entire lives paying someone else to handle their mess. If it breaks, they call a pro. If it fails, they look for someone else to explain why. There's nothing wrong with that. But the gearhead made a different choice long ago. Whether they knew it or not, they decided the machine had a logic. And if they stayed with it long enough, the truth would eventually come out. That choice, which looked like it was about gears and belts, was actually a deep decision about how they see reality. And this is exactly where the psychology of the mechanic begins. Your brain actually processes mechanical puzzles differently than almost any other type of problem. When you're hunting down an engine fault, you aren't just looking for data points. You are literally building a three-dimensional map of an invisible system inside your head. You're balancing sounds, smells, and past failures all at once, checking them against a lifetime of scars and dirty knuckles. Scientists call this embodied cognition, where your hands and your mind act as one, and the knowledge doesn't need words. It's stored in your muscles, in pattern recognition, and in that perfect silence when a bolt finally seats itself and stops turning. The people who have this internal feel usually can't even describe how it works. If you ask them how they knew the battery wasn't charging, they'll probably just stop and think for a second. They might tell you it just felt off. But don't think for a second that they're being vague. They're being incredibly precise, because their knowledge lives deep below the level of everyday speech. This creates a personality that, from the outside, looks a lot like simple stubbornness. People who fix their own machines tend to trust their own eyes way more than some distant authority figure. They've been there when the manuals were wrong, and the experts missed the unique wear and tear of a real-world vehicle, and they felt a vibration with their own fingers that no computer scanner could ever detect. Over the years, this creates a heavy bias toward what they've experienced firsthand. They become very skeptical of people who talk a big game about things they've never actually touched. It's not about being arrogant. It's a worldview forged in the frustration of a problem that only gave in to patient attention. There's also a fascinating link between working on metal and the way we perceive time. You simply cannot rush an engine repair the way you can rush so many other modern tasks. There are steps you must follow and torque settings that exist for physical reasons, not because of some red tape. If you try to take a shortcut, the problem comes back worse, teaching a lesson that is becoming rare in our world. It teaches you that some things have their own pace, and that timeline is absolutely not up for negotiation. People who learn this lesson take it with them into their jobs, their families, and their own minds. They become incredibly patient with slow growth and very suspicious of anyone promising a quick fix for anything. Finally, we have to look at the emotional heart of this. Most people who work on cars learned at the side of someone they loved, maybe a parent on a quiet Saturday. Maybe it was an uncle who never said a word but just handed you a wrench and waited for you to figure it out. Or a neighbor who showed you, instead of lecturing you, without a single formal lesson in sight. There was no syllabus there, because they weren't just passing down technical skills. They were teaching you how to build a relationship with difficulty, and how to stay with a problem until it's solved. That car was just a vessel. The real magic? That's way harder to put into words. It's why knowing cars becomes who you are. See, when you learn from someone you love, it hits different than some random internet tutorial. That wrench actually carries a soul. You remember your first project car down to the last bolt, like it's a chapter of your life story. It's not about the metal, but that bond in the garage during those years when you were still trying to figure out the world. Most people totally misread this. They see that confidence and think it's just about being good with an engine. They see that independence and assume you're just too proud to ask for help. They see that quiet skill and mistake it for being detached. But deep down, something else is at play. You learned early that patience fixes things, that focus matters, and that anyone can master a challenge if they just refuse to quit. That's called an internal locus of control. It's the deep-seated belief that your life is shaped by your own hands, not by luck or someone else's choices. This mindset flips the script. It changes how you work and how you pick yourself up after a failure. You stop fearing the unknown and stop waiting for permission. It's not that you don't need people. It's just that you have this unshakable trust in your own ability to find a way. And nobody handed you that. You built it, piece by piece, on the floor of a garage with a broken machine that finally roared back to life. Here's the thing. Fixing a car is one of the last places left where you can actually be 100% right. In the real world, success is blurry. Was that meeting actually productive? Who knows? Is the work good? Well, it depends on whose opinion matters today. But an engine that finally turns over? That's not an opinion. That's a fact. The feedback is instant and absolute. If your day job is nothing but vague feedback, the garage feels like a sanctuary. It's a place where reality actually gives you a straight answer. This is why turning a wrench is basically therapy for the soul. When life feels messy, when things break down, or the future looks foggy, that engine gives you a problem you can actually solve. That guy hiding out in the garage on a rough Sunday isn't running away from his problems. He's rebuilding his own sense of power and clarity that the world tried to strip away all week long. What looks like a hobby is really a survival strategy. It's not just mechanical skill, it's emotional armor. And the person who seems to just know cars is actually someone who learned the hard way that the world eventually bows down to anyone with enough patient attention. So here's the real question. It's not about whether you can fix a motor. The question is, what's broken in your life right now while you stand there with the hood up, waiting for a hero when the solution was always in your own hands?